So hi there again. I know you've been a guest before. How are you getting on?
Rosalind, I'm getting on great. It's been quite an adventure since we spoke last, but so many amazing experiences, and obviously fantastic that the new book came out on Thursday, and already it's doing great, which I'm delighted.
So yeah, this is your new book, the Scottish Cookbook, which is your fourth book. Is that right?
Yes, fourth
Fourth.
cookbook, and to me, it's kind of amazing that, you would think, goodness, is there any Scottish recipes that I haven't managed to feature yet? And there is. Like, I always seem to find, be it in old cookbooks or from friends or family or in amazing places, kind of recipes to kind of feature in the cookbook that I haven't before. And I even when I finished the book, I was like, God, I still know a few more that I haven't done yet. But one thing I did want to do in this book, because I've called it the Scottish Cookbook, but I always feel like I need to do it in an American accent, the Scottish Cookbook. So, if you're going to buy a cookbook this season, this is the one to get. So chapter 1 is it's like nearly like a Scottish baking 101. It's if you never even get to chapter 2, if you can just do these 12 recipes in chapter 1 from the classics, from shortbread to oat cakes to clouty dumpling, all with a wee twist, then you'll have a very successful wee Scottish kitchen.
So you've said that obviously this is your fourth cookbook. This is one of your favourites. Is it just? Can you tell me a bit more about that? Is it the format? Is it the recipes? Is it just where you're at right now with your writing of cookbooks?
Yeah, it was an amazing experience. I think familiarity helps, kind of thing. I have an amazing photographer, Susie Lowe, and we work so well together. When you're doing a cookbook, you're with your photographer for quite a few weeks. Either in the studio doing the food or out, climbing the hills, or even to the point when we were doing the feature photography of the other guests in the book. I don't know if you've managed to see. Do you know Callum MacLeod, the swimmer?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah.
He even features in the water with his pretty iconic bramble ripple ice cream, and Susie was in Loch Tay with him taking that photograph. So I have to give Susie all credit. I'm sure pretty much every other cookbook in the world she does, she's just in a nice warm studio. I've got her, climbing mountains in the Hebrides, in Loch Tay, shooting topless men. Like, she definitely works hard.
She probably quite enjoys it. That's not an unattractive topless man. So
Look, I'm not complaining either. But no, the book itself, I think, as I said, it was probably the one that I felt kind of the most excited to do, because I had the build-up of the year thinking about what I'd love to do in my fourth book. I was thinking about the chapters and the kind of stories of each of the chapters as well, and kind of what themes there were going to be. And really, kind of at its heart is kind of Céilí culture, this concept of gathering people around to dinner, and kind of celebrating not only the food, but stories and songs and all those things. So that really kind of shines through. But I'm never trying to make anybody into a Michelin star chef. That's not my job at all. There's other people who do that miles better than I do. But what I would love to make people feel is like to make them passionate home bakers, but with a Scottish twist. So that's my absolute goal.
And I think things like that are very approachable, aren't they? Like, there's chefs' cookbooks, which they're trying to make things easy or simple, or, you don't have a lot of time, but coming at it from like a home baker or a home cook, you're already on the same level as, people who are also into cooking and baking. Obviously you're better, but, you're more approachable than, like you say, Michelin star chef, in terms of like it's, you say it's your stories and it's your recipes, and straight away it's like, you know, everyone has that in their life.
I mean, what I'm trying to do with the chapter, so for example, chapter 2 is called I'll Bring Cake. So in other words, when you know you're going to your aunties or your sisters for a wee catch up the next day, and you say, well, I'll bring the cake. That's really what chapter 2 is about. And then I was so lucky. I do a lot of judging of competitions these days, not Bake Off yet, but plenty of competitions everywhere, from the local agricultural show on the Isle of Lewis to the World Bread Awards in Las Vegas. You know, it's quite an eclectic selection of judging that I've done. And one thing I absolutely love is when it's a very simple thing like a cookie or a biscuit. And so you're really, you know, judging that rather than a big cake or decoration. And so I put a chapter called The Hebridean Baker's Biscuit Tin. And so it's really, again, little kind of wee sweet treats that you can make kind of, you know, with your family or yourself. But always indulgent. There is always a kind of like wee twist to it. So actually yesterday I've got one called a bedtime biscuit. Because I always like to finish the night in a wee sweet treat. And it's like a kind of oat cookie, but I've got Horlicks or Ovaltine, but I put Horlicks in it. It's so good. It's so good.
That sounds amazing. I'm a fan of any biscuit, but that sounds very good. And also, the Bake Off would be great. I mean, I also feel like we should have the Great Scottish Bake Off, because there's hardly ever any Scottish contestants in it. So, you know.
I'm on it. Can we shout that as loud as possible, please? Yes, the Great Scottish Bake Off, hosted by myself and yourself. The dream.
I mean, that would be that'd be amazing. So just to go back, you mentioned the swimmer that's in your book. How do you choose the guests that kind of feature in your books? Is that something that's planned well in advance, or do people come to you? Do you go to them?
Oh my goodness, I always go to them, but it's amazing that everybody says yes. I'm always shocked, you know, when people actually say yes. I'd love to be in the book. So we had the amazing Anne McAlpine, who's the BBC Scotland news presenter and does at Landward, but she's from same island. She's from Lewis as well. So I asked her, I asked Callum, and then the amazing author and poet Donna Ashworth. She, every time, particularly with Donna, I remember arriving at her house and she made her banana bread cookies. And it probably took us about an hour and a half to get to the photography, because we were gossiping and talking. So we just wanted to talk to each other so much, because with a lot of these people, maybe we haven't met, but we've chatted on social media, or we have some kind of kindred connection between each other. And it's so lovely when that happens, when you can connect through food and connect, you know, through kind of making these cookbooks. So it's fantastic.
One of the things, I mean, during the pandemic and lockdown things, that's kind of how a lot of people went into baking and sort of relearned things that they didn't, you know, kind of forgotten in the busyness of life. And then when coming back together and stuff and being able to share like things like that, it was really nice. And it was a good period for that type of thing anyway. I know I did it myself. But you mentioned you've used family recipes and talking to friends, and there's a lot of sort of tradition running through your recipes as well, with a little bit of a modern twist. So how do you say you've got more in the bank? Are you always like researching things, talking to people? You've said yourself, you know, how many more Scottish recipes are there? But I mean, there'll be a lot more than people expect. You know, it's not something that a lot of people are doing on a day-to-day basis anymore, unfortunately.
Yeah, no, look, definitely. I mean, one of my favorite days, and you can see behind me, like actually the top two rows are just all cookbooks of this bookshelf. Like I literally have probably like 200 cookbooks, and particularly old cookbooks, old Scottish cookbooks. And it's amazing where you can find research. I remember that classic steamed pudding. It's called a spotted dick. And I always wondered why it was called a spotted dick. And then I realized that it wasn't called a spotted dick in Scotland. That was the English version of it. So in Old English, a pudding was a pudic. But in Old Scots, a pudding was a pudog. So a spotted dick was called a spotted dog in Scotland. So hence then I've put in my cookbook a rum and raisin spotted dog. And I sort of have this dream or vision that people are making my recipes, and when they go to serve them at the table, they're telling the story that goes along with them. And I remember for my chapter I've got a chapter called Soups and Pies, and I was chatting to friends about because I don't like to repeat too much, so I've already put in Cullen skink and cockaliki and Scotch broth and all those things. And so I put in feather fowlie, I had a neeps and tatty soup, but I was looking for another one, and a friend of mine was like, you should put that really lovely soup from Mull. And I was like, soup from Mull? And she was like, oh, you must know it. It's delicious. And it's got like a kind of curry flavour to it. And I was like, I have no idea what you're talking about. And then she looked it up and she was like, yeah, mulligatawny, which obviously is definitely not from Mull. So in my book, I've called it Isle of Mull Itcatawny soup. And it is a delicious soup with no connection to Mull. But now, every time I think of Mull, I will definitely be thinking of Isle of Mulligatawny soup.
And it's nice that people are also, like you say, getting a slight education as well as learning something to make something new or something, a twist on something new. I mean, we've spoken before about, you learning to bake from quite a young age and getting inspiration from your family. But was that always kind of the point of you sitting down to write these recipes, that you wanted to continue on this sort of history and tradition, and that continues on through all your different books?
Yeah, I think absolutely at its heart is I use food as a conduit to talking about the culture, the storylines, the identity of the Hebrides and the language of Gaelic. That's definitely what I use the books for. And the recipes definitely are to create a kind of feeling of comfort. We're kind of building into the kind of, well, it's certainly in Lewis, it's already winter, but I pretend it's autumn, but we very quickly bypass autumn in the Hebrides, it always seems. So it's very much that kind of comforting feeling, these recipes, and be it the kind of the pies, or again, even these, you say about these kind of wee twists I do. Most people in Scotland will have had cockaliki soup, or think they might have had it. You've got the three classic ingredients of chicken, leeks, and prunes. And I was trying to think how I would use that in another recipe. And I love using risotto or orzo pasta as a kind of midweek meal. And I thought to myself, do you know what? Often I'll use leeks and chicken in like an orzo dish. I wonder if I put prunes through it, would it work? Unbelievable. So I've got a cockaliki orzo in the book. Oh my goodness. Just that kind of slight sweetness with the prunes and leeks along with the chicken and everything. It's delicious.
It sounds amazing. So is this sort of the sort of cozy kind of time of year? Is that your sort of favourite time to bake, or is it sort of any time?
Yeah, no, I love baking at this point because, look, I have the sweetest tooth in the world, like non-negotiable. I have the sweetest tooth in the world. And so I have to have dessert every night. But not always an indulgent dessert, but I have dessert every night. So knowing that I'm kind of going into the season where you don't mind getting a big jumper on, getting the fire on, and having a wee treat every evening, that to me is perfect.
I mean, how do you stay in good shape? Because I would be about the size of the house if I was having a dessert every night.
Well, funnily enough, I think there's two things. Firstly, Peter, my partner, he proudly calls himself the official Hebridean Baker cake taster. He has tried on many occasions every recipe, because normally when you do a cookbook, to get to 75, you probably start with about maybe 140, 150 ideas. And then you practice them, you whittle them down, you start to put them into chapters. Sometimes they fit, sometimes they don't. So Peter has tried everything. So he always says that nobody would buy my books if he was skinny.
Well, there you go.
But at the same time, because we spend most of our time off grid in our wee cabin, the only way to get there is by canoe. So firstly, there's a lot of exercise, even getting home at night to the cabin. But then when you are there, you can't just be on the sofa going, oh, do you know what? I would love a double decker. I'll just run to the shop. There's no running to the shop in the evenings. It's like an hour to get to the shop. So you just have to make do with, baking a cake or just, whatever's in the cupboard.
Do you have a favourite recipe or sort of family story, either from this cookbook or throughout the years, that you sort of always come back to?
Yeah, I mean, this whole thing kind of began because of a clootie dumpling, or a duff as we call it in Gaelic. And my Aunt Bella, who is now 96, still my absolute hero, still bakes pretty much every day, and her amazing clootie dumpling. And that's why I started creating these videos that I do in my Instagram to kind of share the stories and recipes and traditions that we have. And the just total coincidence, I think must have been one of my first ever followers, in like maybe in my first 400 followers, happened to be the head columnist of Elle magazine in America. She just happened to find my social media and really liked it, and wrote her whole column one month about my voice, my accent. And I would say, even in Scotland, I think a Hebridean accent isn't that well known, until folk like Anne McAlpine and a few others started appearing on the news. I don't think people would have heard our accent that often. And if they had, maybe we would have sounded a wee bit, I don't know, country bumpkin to folk, or maybe even not sounding very Scottish to some folk. So she talked in her column about my accent. I think my two favourite lines, she said, "He sounds like how I imagine a piece of shortbread would talk if it came to life." And then she said, "Come for his cakes, stay for the way he says, cream your butter."
To be fair.
Which I thought was amazing. And I'm just back from my US tour. I was there I just had my 7th US tour, my 3rd this year. And I was in San Francisco. And there's a beautiful wee cookbook, a bookshop that only sells cookbooks in San Francisco called Omnivore Books on Food. And I had an event there, and the place was packed, like literally packed to the rafters. And I walked in and there was 3 ladies in the front row with T-shirts with "cream your butter" written on their T-shirts. And I thought, I've made it. If I've made it, So it is kind of amazing that just from something as simple as, somebody finding you on social media, or, trying to share your passion for, a Hebridean island, has resonated so strongly across the world. It's amazing how the culture of Scotland, the stories and the food, when I travel in America, going to, say, Highland Games, I was in New Hampshire Highland Games just a couple of weekends ago, and there were, 27,000 people a day at the Highland Games, and that's not in any way one of the biggest. I was at Grandfather Mountain Highland Games in July, which has over 50,000 people a day, and they're all there to celebrate Scotland. Isn't that amazing? That there's people around the world that actually will celebrate our country. Yeah, fantastic.
Yeah, probably more than we do. So yeah, it's amazing. And it's funny you say that about accents, because the woman that owns Island Larder on Shetland, we spoke to her earlier this year, went up for Up Hilly. She's gone viral because of her accent. And again, even being from Scotland, you listen and you think, one, that sounds amazing, but two, you're not quite sure where to place her. So yeah, it's funny that something like that's only for like a sort of quite small group of people, but it goes worldwide because everyone's really interested in the accent.
You're totally right, and I do remember one of my more eclectic jobs before I started as the Hebridean Baker. I actually used to present the Scottish Cup draw on Sky Sports. And so I was the voice of the balls on the Scottish Cup draw. So I would be going, welcome to the fourth round of the William Hill Scottish Cup. But I remember there was one fourth round draw, and there is a certain thing that is quite hard for Hebridean folk to say. Anything with RS. It's quite hard. We sound like we're Sean Connery when we're doing it. And so I remember in that draw, there was Rangers, Cove Rangers, Brora Rangers, Berwick Rangers, and similarly, they got so many complaints that this guy who they thought wasn't Scottish was doing the Scottish Cup draw, So I think, I'm delighted now that folk will have heard island accents more, be it, as I said, from Anne, who's amazing at reading the news, or maybe they've gone onto my social media, or as you say, one of the Shetland voices as well, and realising that, culturally Scotland is amazingly eclectic.
Yeah, definitely. Just so many different accents. So you've mentioned sort of putting little twists on more traditional recipes like your cookery orzo. Obviously, there'll be a lot of positives of that. I imagine it's very creative having to do that. Is there anyone that ever comes up to you and been like, what have you done to this very traditional thing?
Well, that's actually going back to the clouty dumpling. So I kind of feel obliged because it's for us, it's the Hebrides' most iconic bake. Like if you go to somebody's house and somebody gives you a slice of clouty dumpling, then they like you a lot. You know what I mean? That's a big deal. But so in every book I have done a different twist on a clouty dumpling. And in my third book, I'd never done a banana loaf because I just thought, well, I think everybody knows how to make a banana loaf. But I do love banana loaf. And I thought, what if I did a cross between a banana loaf and a clouty dumpling? And so called a banana duff, or buff as we call it. And it took a little bit of science to get it right. Oh my goodness. It's unbelievable. Like, it is unbelievable. But I went and did a book festival in Stornoway, and I had a lot of older ladies quite cynical about my banana clouty dumpling. But I remember then going to the supermarket, I think it was just about a month later, and managed unbelievably to see two people who had been at the book event, had made the banana clouty dumpling. Both came up to me that day going, I take it all back. I will never make it any other way. It is spectacular. So even though they were a little bit worried about the banana clouty dumpling, I managed to win them round, which I was very happy with.
Which, yeah, I mean, it's because things like this, I wouldn't ever, I've tried to make clouty dumpling once and it just didn't work. And then it kind of puts you off. So like these modernisations will bring more people into something that is quite traditional. So you mentioned Hogmanay there. You do have Christmas recipes in all your books. Can you tell us a little bit about Christmas on Lewis, Christmas at home for you, any sort of traditions, things that you definitely cook or bake every year?
There is amazing traditions in the build up to Christmas. And it sort of starts for us, look, it's pretty wild and dark being in the Outer Hebrides, at winter time. We have tough storms, often maybe only 3 to 4 hours of daylight. So we have to consider that and try and celebrate things, even though it's maybe not the nicest time of year, weather-wise. So we have a celebration that starts on the 21st of December, which is winter solstice, called Coinneach Superin, the night of the seven suppers, because they say that it's dark for so long you could eat dinner 7 times before the sun rises again. So really for us, that's the kind of start of 10 days of celebrations. And of course, for us, we call it Eichal in Gaelic, but Hogmanay is our biggest night of the year. That is our biggest celebration, with, of course, a Ceilidh dance, but, a gathering of people and stories and songs and food, So even though, as I said, it's a challenging time of year, weather-wise and with all the darkness, we definitely try and celebrate it. There was, I've got a great friend in Isla, Angus, and he was telling me about, that your mum and dad would always kind of try and scare you that, oh, if you're bad, you won't get presents. Isla, the island of, they just took it to the next level. They had a monster called Craimdu Nanolak, the dark, crooked man of Christmas. And if you ever had a storm and you would hear, I don't know, something outside or something on the roof, his mum and dad would say, oh, that's Craimdu Nanolak, he's coming. And he would come down your chimney to steal your presents. Now, if I thought an old crooked man was going to climb down my chimney to steal my presents, I would be the best behaved boy on the island. So even with all the nice things, there's always a little bit of mystery, to keep you well behaved.
Yeah, God, that's terrifying.
And it was always, because it was so stormy, there'd always be some noises outside. So the fact that, your parents could, make it as if it was something scary, that kept you under control.
Yeah, no, that definitely would have worked on me as well. And in terms of food and drink as well, or sorry, not drink, sorry, food. What's your sort of go-to for Christmas?
Yeah, I mean, look, I'm absolutely with the classics for the first two courses, but I do definitely do a lot of indulgence for my Christmas Day desserts. I always have three. Non-negotiable. There's always three Christmas Day desserts, and to be honest with you, I know it's not for everyone, but I love Christmas cake. I love it. I love the fruit cake. I love the marzipan. I love the icing. I love the whole lot. But I start, when everybody else is getting up, for fancy dress at Halloween, that to me is my first Christmas Day planning. The whole day, I put Mariah Carey's Christmas album on, and that's the day I start making all my Christmas cakes, because that's sort of one of my kind of Christmas gifts that I give to friends and family is two things: my Christmas cake, but also I love autumn for foraging, and particularly brambles. I think we're totally blessed in Scotland with so much foraging, but autumn foraging is my absolute favourite. So my freezer is packed with brambles or wild blackberries, and I make a thing called bramble whiskey. So I have a bottle of whiskey in a kind of like big jar, fill the rest with brambles. I put a little bit of lime zest and juice because I like it a wee bit kind of tart as well. And I shake it. I've got literally bottles and bottles and bottles of it. Shake it every day for about, I don't know, maybe 9 weeks. Firstly, the colour is beautiful. It takes on that dark ruby purple of the brambles. And it sort of doesn't taste of whiskey and it doesn't taste of brambles. It's its own remarkable kind of liqueur. So most people will get a Christmas cake and a bottle of bramble whiskey from me in the build up to Christmas, and everybody seems very happy. So there's always a Christmas cake, but because there's a lot of kind of festive spices, and you either love them or you're not a fan. These kind of cinnamons and kind of all these kind of mixed spices. So I always make sure that is a lighter dessert. And I love to make festive pavlova. I love pavlova on Christmas Day. That kind of like envelopment of meringue and cream and fruit. So I like to make sure that there's a balance between the different types of desserts on Christmas Day as well.
Sounds delicious. Sounds, how Tom Cruise is famous for sending people a cake every year. This is like a much more wholesome version of it, because he doesn't make the cake. And just you've got your new book out, but you're working on a TV program as well. Can you tell us anything about that?
Yeah, I mean, quite exciting to say the least, because I mean, in my family, Peter is the TV guy. You know, he has his own show on BBC Alba, and I sort of appear in it every so often. But telly was always sort of his thing. But the moment that they came to me with the idea, I was like, oh my goodness, I always think if you would watch it yourself, then you know it'll work. And it's a show, it's a food show, but it's a show about islands and island culture as well. So in each episode, I start in the Hebrides, but then I will travel and learn about the food culture of the Hebrides. But then I will travel overseas to an island. In the first series is Scandinavia, and I will learn about not only their food culture and go on these amazing food adventures. Like in one episode, I'm going cod fishing in one of those big trawler fishing boats in the Arctic Circle. I mean, yeah, amazing kind of adventure like that. But then also kind of learn from the people. Is there something that connects the mentality and culture of islanders together? You know, is there something in an islander that resonates across the world? That's what I kind of want to learn in this. So I'm really looking forward to that. We start filming that. That'll be out next autumn, which I think people will really enjoy.
Nice. And that's BBC Scotland?
Actually, I don't know where it's going to land. I'm doing two versions. I'm doing a Gaelic and an English version. Obviously, the Gaelic version is for BBC Alba. The English version, the rights have been bought by this global broadcaster. So it's going to be everywhere. But I don't know yet where. It was amazing to think that I got there because of the culture and the food of the Hebrides. That's what have inspired people. What a treat! So that was pretty special. And I'm just about to start my Scottish tour. So I am going everywhere from Stornoway to Aberdeen to Oban to St Andrews, Edinburgh, Glasgow, Inverness, Dollar, Stewarton, everything in between. So people can go on to hebrideanbaker.com to find out the tour dates as well.
Well, I'll hopefully see you in Glasgow, because I think I've got that in my calendar actually. But yes, but thank you very much. It's been great to see you and speak to you again. And I'm looking forward to seeing your book. It's in the office. I've not seen it yet, so I need to go into the office to get it.
Please do.
But yeah, I'll be looking out for that banana clouty dumpling, because I've never attempted it again after it kind of went really hard in the oven. So I know you're not supposed to put it in the oven anyway. It's a whole thing. But thank you very much, and yeah, have a good book tour and Christmas when it comes.
Thank you very much, Rosalind.